Hello again and welcome back. Okay, so far everything has been done to this image of a barn out in the Montana plains except for sharpening. And in this lesson we're going to show you how we can use Smart Sharpen to sharpen this for final output. I like working on layers, so let's start off by making a background copy. And then let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Let's go to That's print size, and we'll just scroll in a couple of clicks further to get a real good feel with what's going on here. And now we'll run up to filter, click on filter, and then run down to sharpen, and then over to Smart Sharpen and click there. Okay, this will give us this dialog box where we have a huge little window here that we can toggle the view of it. I like to leave mine at about 100% here. Wherever we click in the image, that's the view we'll have in the box. And if we want to fine-tune that view, we have this grabber hand we can click and drag. Really cool. When we click and drag, we do see the image before whatever effects over here. So we have a small amount of sharpening set up right here. If we click in the image, we'll notice, watch the line here, that sharpening does disappear. That's the image before the effect of sharpening has been applied, and when we let go, there, the sharpening is now being applied and we can see. So a real easy way to do a quick preview on and off at 100%, and then to see the preview of what's going on over here, we can toggle this little preview checkbox on and off. Okay, we have a couple of sliders that we've seen before over in the unsharp mask. It's the amount, functions the same way as it did in the unsharp mask. And radius, again, that functions the same way as it did in the unsharp mask. There is no threshold adjustment to make here, so that is one less slider we have to worry about. But we do pick up this little remove blur. What kind of blur are we removing? Typically, as landscape photographers, we're going to be removing something called lens blur. It may not actually be lens blur, but it is probably the best algorithm to use for landscape photography. And then we have a little checkbox down here called more accurate, which basically seems to increase the sharpening a little bit. I don't usually do my sharpening with this checked on. I usually don't find it to be much of an improvement. Okay, if we come up over here, we can see that there is another button we can push, and it's called Advanced. Let's go ahead and see what's going on with that. When we choose Advanced, we pick up a few subtabs back here called Shadow and Highlight. What these subtabs do is basically allow us to deselect tonalities that are being sharpened. To show you what's going on, let's go ahead and run up the amount a little bit strong and the radius a bit strong. Let's go a little more. Let's go crazy with it. Now let's go ahead and click on the Shadow subtab and discuss the items in here. You can think of the fade amount basically somewhat like layer opacity except in reversed. At 0, the sharpening that was applied out in this outer tab is applying at 100%. If we run fade amount to 100, then we're totally blocking the sharpening on this tab here in some shadow, some tonal width of shadows. And we're defining the tonal width of shadows at which it's being blocked right down here. So if we go all the way over to the right at 100%, we are now, with the fade amount set to 100, blocking the sharpening at everything from a mid-tone to the deepest shadow. If we want to choose just deep shadows, we can run it back to the left here, and now we're just choosing deep shadows to block the sharpening at 100%. So this can be useful if you have an older camera that has noise in the dark areas. Then you can actually, you don't necessarily want to sharpen that noise. It looks grainy then. So this allows you to say, hey, you know what? my shadows, my deep shadows, I don't want to sharpen those and pick up grain. So maybe I'll do something like 50% sort of opacity of sharpening on those dark shadows, and then they won't look too grainy. The radius slider here, this controls the size of the area around each pixel that is used to determine whether a pixel is in the shadows or highlights. Now let's take a look at the highlight tab. Very similar thing going on, except now with tonal width you would be controlling from the midtones all the way up to the highlights, the brightest highlights. For practical purposes, I'm really not too concerned about my highlights, so I typically leave this set with these default settings. Once the fade amount is down to 0 though, it doesn't really matter what you have here because nothing is being applied. And for here, I usually have this somewhere, my settings in here are somewhere like this, just to avoid getting any noise in the deep dark shadows sharpened. I don't want to sharpen that noise. If you're shooting with a newer camera, you could probably leave your fade amount down to 0 as well, because there essentially is no noise in your shadows. So in reality, once you have these items back here, your defaults put in place, you typically don't have to go back here and goof around with them too much. So you're going to be working on the basic tab, and now all you have to be concerned about is just moving these two sliders to get something that you like. Again, this is going to be to taste. You may not do this at all, but if you do, you're going to do this to your own personal taste. Typically, we see our radius being somewhere between about 0.3 and just over 1. Let's get it back in that range to start off with. And our amount is usually going to fall somewhere between about 75 and 250, 275. So let's pull that back into that range and see what we think. Yeah, actually, that doesn't look too bad right there. The goal here is to slide these around a little bit and avoid the halos that we showed you with the unsharp mask and get something that looks pretty reasonable. We can click in here and let go. We could toggle this on and off. Fantastic. Once we're happy with the amount of sharpening that's being applied, simply click OK. Alright, this brings us to the end of this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll pick up right here and show you how you can mask off a portion of the image. For example, wow, I don't want to see any grain at all in my blue sky. How do I mask that area off so that it isn't sharpened? See you next time.